technology, transformation to building high-performing teams. And he has successfully managed budget in hundreds of millions of dollars. What kind of principles have remained constant for you across the both environments that you've worked in?
There's a lot. Thanks, Cynthia. Great question. There are a lot of commonalities between the military service and the business world.
How do you balance the strategic vision from day-to-day operational execution, especially when you're in the large and complex organization? And how do people kind of play an integral part in this?
Thanks for asking. Well, it's not easy to do.
Gosh, that is one hell of a story. I've never had that kind of a story on my podcast. Welcome everyone to the Vserve Ebusiness Solution podcast on supply chain management, where we invite some of industry's great experts to share their experiences and gather some helpful tips along the way. I'm Cynthia, your host, and today we are joined by an extraordinary person. He is a unique blend of leadership experience from both military and the corporate world. As a former Marine commanding officer and a C-level executive, he has a proven track record of managing massive operations from startups to Fortune 500 companies. He's an expert, I want to say everything, from technology, transformation to building high-performing teams. And he has successfully managed budget in hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm so excited. So please help me in joining Andrew J. Thompson. Andrew, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Cynthia. Glad to be on the show. Appreciate the kind intro.
You're welcome. I feel like I missed a lot of things during the intro, but this is all I could do in the 2 minutes they give me. But do you want me to address you as Drew or just keep it as Andrew?
Drew's probably works best. That's what most people know me by, at least at this live stage. So that'd be perfect.
Perfect. Well, Drew, your career has been truly impressive, and we have loved learning a little bit more about you. But that's where I always start the podcast is tell us a little bit about yourself, how you've gone from military to corporate world and why have you, kind of ended up with supply chain or how?
Well, thanks for the question. Well, I'm not sure it was ever a goal or a plan to end up in supply chain and logistics and maintenance and operations, but I'm glad I'm here. I grew up in Washington State and then made my way into the military in the early 90s. Had a chance to play some college football along the way and then went out into the Marine Corps and served for a long period of time, did a career in the Marines and was involved in aviation. And so to keep airplanes running, it takes a great orchestration of parts and people and processes to do that. So that was really a great foundation of really embarking on the rest of my business career when I retired about 10 years ago. So I've worked in technology, worked in a couple startups, worked with a Caterpillar for a while, and then have been here really in the beverage industry in operations and fleet management, which comprises all kinds of supply chain activities, logistics, acquisitions, sustainment. So that's really how I ended up here, and I'm glad to be here.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I'm pretty sure like both the worlds are so different, but the leadership disciplines kind of, remain the same. So instead of like, what kind of principles have remained constant for you across the both environments that you worked in?
There's a lot. Thanks, Cynthia. Great question. There are a lot of commonalities between the military service and the business world. And some of the constants I see, number one, are people are always a constant. So whether you have a uniform on or whether you're working in an office place or a warehouse or wherever you may be, people are a common thread. So both in the military and in business as well. And when you have people, there's all kinds of things that teams can do together. So teamwork is a common thread in the military and in business. Problem solving, there's always plenty of problems to be solved, especially supply chain related problems and tangled knots that need people to untangle. So I think, again, people, teamwork, problem solving, and really for a leader is establishing the conditions for people to be successful so that people are clear on what expectations are, people are clear on the direction that the organization is going. And really, those are very common threads, regardless of the military environment or at least the business environment too.
Yep. People, they're the most important, like everywhere. And I hear them, I heard this conversation about people, culture, pop up in every, podcast that I've done so far. But how do you balance? How do you balance the, the strategic vision from day to day operational execution, especially when you're in the large and complex organization? And how do people kind of, play an integral part in this?
Thanks for asking. Well, it's not easy to do, especially as if you move up in an organization or your span of responsibility increases. Keeping people connected is a real challenge, so that people understand, really what needs to happen day to day that supports a broader objective in the organization. So one of the things I've found to be successful is just making sure that people are somehow connected in some way. There are digital resources to do that. There's ways to message. There's online tools to do that, but I've always found just a face-to-face connection.
Yeah.
So if you're at a strategic level or even just an operational level or down on the ground somewhere making things happen, it's always helpful just to have a conversation. Hey, how you doing? How are things going? Are you clear on what we're doing? Do you need anything? Are you grumpy about anything?
Yeah.
Those kinds of prompts really lead to some kind of a better connection to help what's trying to happen at a large scale. So I find that to be useful. Harder to do though, as your responsibilities expand and increase, but I've always found that to be a useful practice.
Wow. Okay. And the whole army culture and the life really such discipline that you guys have to carry over the years. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things that have influenced you in your approach, and in fleet and logistics is what I think you're focused on, leadership that you do. So I would love to hear any stories or any examples that you still carry forward from your Marine commanding officer times that have helped you in your leadership today.
Thanks again. You're asking great questions, Cynthia. I was fortunate when I was younger and first just starting out in my professional journey, where I had older people in the organization, wonderful men and women who were very competent, very skilled, who took a chance to just invest some time in me and to show me the ropes or to teach me ways to do things that were helpful and maybe to watch out for some certain pitfalls or things to avoid. So I was very fortunate to be the recipient of that. So as I grew up, I tried to do the same and pass that along to some of the younger members of the organization. But especially when I was a commanding officer, I think the things that stood out were, really just the privilege of supporting a team and making sure that the resources were commensurate with the requirements. That's not always easy to do, but to make sure people had what they needed, tools, parts, equipment, those kinds of things, or if they had a good workspace, if the lighting was working, just all those sorts of things. I felt like not only just equipping them, but just making sure that the conditions were right, that the fence line was protected, so to speak, so that they felt like they could do the best job they could possibly do, so they had what they needed. Following through is always helpful too. So it's not just planting a seed, but it's following up and making sure that, it's watered and it gets a proper amount of sun and it gets the right type of support over time, over a long period of time. And I always think too, just even in my time as a CO, watching people be successful, it gave me great joy seeing people accomplish goals, do great things, help other people, seeing the team win, really very, very fulfilling. So again, I was the recipient of a lot of that from teachers, coaches, and, senior military leaders, but tried to do that along the way as well as I've advanced in my journey.
Yeah. And people appreciation, like we talk about, it's so important in every field that you're in, no matter which business you're in. I would love to hear a very specific story where employee engagement, right? You're engaging with employees or engaging with mid-level managers. How has it directly, translated into like a measurable operational or financial performance improvements within an organization that you have, that's a good example, I guess.
An example that comes to mind, Cynthia, is we just did this in the last 24 months. One of our managers had an idea to manage batteries more effectively. And when I say batteries, these are forklift batteries. So they're 3,000 pounds. They're really big. Yeah. And so when we operate a multitude of equipment pieces all throughout multiple locations, this is a major endeavor. So our manager had an idea to decrease the total number of batteries we needed to keep on hand. He found a more effective way to store the batteries. We found a better way to charge the batteries. And really what it led to, Cynthia, was 6 figures of savings year over year on battery replenishment expense, a decreased square footage requirement in our warehouses, so we didn't have to store as many. And it was safer and more accessible for our employees or our forklift operators to get access to the batteries themselves. So it was a multi-level win. And I think we calculated maybe a 12-month return on investment for that. We achieved that in about 8 or 9 months. And then it's year over year savings. And that just came from someone who was close to the work. And so we put the plan in place, we executed it, and that's in place right now. It's working really well for our team.
Wow, that's such a great story to share. And it's just by listening to them and kind of having them be a part of the decision making can make such a big difference, I guess. So there's a lot of when you're doing these kind of activities, there's a lot of trust and alignment within the leading teams, especially C executive, mid-level managers, the floor people. How you've managed companies with over 800 plus employees across multiple facilities is what we know. What is your approach in building this trust and alignment within the teams, I guess?
Well, it has to be a steady approach. You can't just fabricate trust overnight. It's a perishable commodity. And trust, what's interesting about the word is the letters U and S. So us, people together in the middle of trust. And so I think just knowing that it's going to take time, especially as a leader, you have to earn people's trust. They're just not going to automatically give that to you. So I really found in my experience, Cynthia, it's just kind of one person at a time, one small team at a time, one location at a time, and just over time. So it's very steady drumbeat, very deliberate process, and really just listening to what people have to say. Those things I've found seem to be really useful to building trust and then establishing that over the long term. And again, that was exemplified for me for many years by people who are more experienced and wiser than I was. And I found that to be really successful now after some time in the marketplace.
Wow. So I'm pretty sure, especially now that technology has grown so much over the years. Do you also work with outsourced teams? Has there ever been times that you have to work with outsourced team and the cultural differences? The cultural differences can be even within the multiple locations that you have within the United States. But anytime that you've had to work with an international team and how that was brought together.
We have worked with outsourced teams. We do work with outsourced teams, Cynthia, and really that's a function of either two or three different things. It's a highly competitive labor market right now for skilled technicians, whether they're repairing automated systems or material handling equipment, electricity, trucks. So they're in very high demand. So what we look at in terms of a third party, or if we're going to outsource our partnership, we'll look at what their capacity is and what they can do over time. So how many trucks could they help us repair? How many people could they help us with in terms of boots on the ground? So we'll look at capacity. We'll also look at the technical skill, and we have to be very precise on some of our expectations there because we have really unique technical requirements. So we want to make sure that the skill alignment is matched up. And then of course, like anyone who's going to make that sort of decision, whether it's something we do in-house or we outsource, is just what that is sustainable from a financial standpoint. So we look at that pretty regularly, and we lean on some third-party partners who are long-standing. We have great rapport with them, and we work with them day in and day out. So I've actually been on the phone with a couple of them this morning. So we do that very thoughtfully as best we can, and we're grateful for their help.
Perfect. So, moving to the technology part, AI, so many digital things that are going on right now. Biggest one, obviously, being AI. And your background is in technology transformation. So I'm pretty sure there's so many innovations in fleet and logistics technology that you have your eyes on. So what excites you right now when you see something out there?
It's always changing. And so what's exciting about it is to see what is emerging and what's coming into the market that's available for trucking companies, for distribution centers, for any type of in-transit visibility, inventory management, diagnostic resources and tools to try to get ahead of equipment before it breaks. So those kinds of things are coming so quickly. And so it's one thing to see the technology itself in isolation, but it's a whole other thing to see how that technology integrates and interacts with other technological products too. So those things are coming very quickly. They're coming at us, faster than we can keep up with. So that's just kind of the first part, Cynthia. But I think too, especially in our business, that's still a high demand on people, is making sure that what goes on in the physical world and with what our people do is also matched up with what the digital world tells us, because those two things have to work in partnership. They have to
Yeah.
work hand in hand. And so as exciting as the technology is, we really don't want to take our eye off the wonderful things that our people do. And we want to use technology to help our people be successful. So it's never a dull moment. I can promise you that.
And is there any tool that you're currently using that you probably didn't use, like, I'm pretty sure there's so many, 10 years ago, but you really like it now?
We've just partnered with a large technology company called Samsara. And what
Hmm.
Samsara has done is we've put camera systems, event recorders in our trucks. And so those can see outward and they're also rearward facing. And so what we've done with partnership with Samsara is we've had just incredible improvement to our safety outcomes, our driver performance, what is happening on the roads. And really overall, that's a better way to keep our fleet safe and
Hmm.
our people safe. And they're a
Yep.
remarkably highly fast moving technology company based out on the West Coast. They've been a terrific partner. We've been in business with them for about a year now. And that's certainly been an exciting endeavor and a big safety initiative for our company.
Wow, perfect. And in your experience, when you're deciding in terms of branding or customer perception, and especially fleet and logistics strategy, right? There's so many things that people see, right, and they talk about. What has been one of your biggest challenge overcoming something that has kind of broken down along the way, and you had to fix it immediately?
Well, one part about being in the operations and logistics business, Cynthia, is something's always broken and someone's always mad.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we get used to that. But if a brand changes, for instance, if consumer tastes change, or if there's
Mhm.
a new product that's being introduced to the marketplace, or maybe there's a big promotion. I think we've done some product rollout, Cynthia, for the Super Bowl, for example.
Oh,
We
okay.
have to be ready on the fleet side to respond and make sure we get the equipment. We try to be as responsive as we can, but we work in close partnership with our sales teams, our marketing teams.
Yeah.
I'm here in Dallas, Fort Worth. So 2 seasons ago, the Texas Rangers won the World Series. So
Yeah.
there was a co-branded partnership with Anheuser-Busch and the Texas Rangers. So we put some of that on some of our trailers. So we try to be as flexible as we can and responsive to what's happening in the world outside our fence line. But
Yeah.
we work in close partnership with our sales and marketing team to make sure that the branding that's represented on
Mhm.
our vehicles and it's identified on our vehicles is keeping up with, really, most importantly, our customers.
And how do you assess, whether this process, a certain kind of process, right, should be kept in-house or should be given to a third party? Like, we can manage this, we cannot manage that. Like, how do you assess that on a daily basis?
It's kind of an ongoing question, I would imagine, for people that are making trade-offs in business. I would
Yeah.
probably rewind the tape a little bit to an earlier response. I'd really look at capacity. Do
Yeah.
we have the capacity internally, or does someone else have the capacity? And maybe, truthfully, they might be able to do it better.
Yeah.
So I look at that very, very clearly if I can. And then really, I want to make sure that the skill match is correct, so that the technical skill, the technical demand is a correct crossover. And then again, I'm
Mhm.
always want to be thoughtful, especially being a steward of the company's dollar, to make sure that we're spending our finances wisely, and so
Mhm.
that those things can line up. I'm usually happy if I can get 2 out of the 3. If I can get all three of those boxes checked, I do it. If it's 1 out of 3, it's a tough situation. But hopefully we don't find ourselves in that spot too often.
Yeah, and gosh, Drew, you're so calm and decisive when you're talking about all of these things. And you've led through many crises. I've read in your profile as well, that you've gone through cyber attacks and supply chain disruptions and financial shortfalls. How do you stay, like, calm and decisive in those moments? I know now it's like a fun time, but because you're having a conversation, but usually when you're going through those crises, how does that work out?
Well, I'm thankful for a lot of years of training in crisis management, especially when I was in the military. So we're exposed
Mm,
to, risk was a close companion, danger was a close companion. That was
yep.
really at the forefront, oftentimes, of doing things that we were required to do. But I think, to answer your question, Cynthia, calm is contagious. And if a leader can bring some peace and some order,
Hmm.
and just a little bit of sense of calm, especially if things are going speeding up and going real fast, or hard to keep up with, a leader can have a really important impact or profound impact on those around them. that way. So just calm is contagious. If the leader starts getting overly excited, or if a leader starts to get stressed out or is starting to exhibit those things, even though they might be feeling them, it can permeate or it can spill over into the team. So the leader's calm really leads to the team's calm. So anyway, calm is contagious. I try to do that. I haven't always gotten that right, but try to certainly do that. Maybe being a little bit older, maybe not too wise, but maybe wiser than I was when I was younger.
Well, that's amazing. And how do you personally? So I would love to learn how to be like calm and positive, because I'm usually the one who's overthinking a lot and like always seeing the negative side of it. So what do you personally do to keep learning, adapting, and like staying ahead, especially now with this fast changing landscape, and more so in the fleet management, because obviously that's more fast moving than what we do on a daily basis. So love to learn some things from you on that basis.
Well, thank you. I think certainly reading always helps. And what reading does is it provides a broader context. Reading provides perspective. Reading helps I'm reading about Winston Churchill right now and some of the demands he had as the prime minister in World War II, and just the remarkable demands of protecting the Britain, certainly against all the global threats in World War II, the massive logistical scope, all the danger, all the challenges of breaking the enemy's secret codes. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So being able to read helps provide perspective and realize, well, my problems might be pretty significant, but they're not as big as trying to save the world. So
Yep.
that helps. Reading always helps, and it just provides that backdrop and something to compare to. I think too, experience always helps. You sometimes just have to walk the journey and know that you have some things to compare it to, where you can maybe recollect and draw back to, hey, this isn't as bad as the situation we dealt with last year or 5 years ago. But experience is very helpful teacher. It gives you the test first and the lesson later, but it definitely helps, so you can kind of know how to sort of deal with it when it comes across the desk. But I think reading and experience are probably two ways that really help day to day.
Well, then looking back, which of when you kind of like see your transformational projects, or turnaround projects, where you had to get rid of the old, bring in something new. If you have one project that you are most proud of, what would that be and why?
Gosh, Cynthia, this is a great one. I'm really going to harken back here. I think I was 26 or 27 years old. I was on active duty. I was a junior officer in the Marine Corps, and we had a team of about 100 Marines, and we went from our base in the United States. We went to an operating base in Asia, and we had to rebuild 5 airplanes from scratch. The airplanes were not flying. They didn't have engines in them. There were some manufacturing reliability issues with the planes. There was some safety of flight issues. It was a significant challenge, and we had 6 months to figure this out. So what we did is we put our heads together, we worked with industry, we worked with our supporting agencies within the Marine Corps, and we just rolled up our sleeves and went to work. And what we did is we rebuilt each of those 5 airplanes from scratch. We got engines in them, we got them back to a flying status, we were able to get our aviators trained, and we flew those planes within a matter of weeks. And then at the end of that 6-month period, we flew them all the way back across the Pacific Ocean back to our home base in the United States. And it was a tribute just to the ingenuity, the hard work, the teamwork of our detachment of 100 people. I was proud to be a part of that. And man, there were just some wonderful patriots that were involved with that. And was so glad to be part of that. That was back a long time ago, but very memorable in terms of a great sense of satisfaction with that group of people, and I'm thankful that I got a chance to do it.
Gosh, that is one hell of a story. I've never had that kind of a story on my podcast. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for your service as well, because that is just incredible to hear. In 6 months, 5 planes. That's like almost a month a plane. That's amazing.
And we actually had them ready before that 6-month mark, but we needed to have them ready to get them prepared to fly across the Pacific Ocean. So the timeline was condensed. We had a lot of people asking questions. I guess you could say we had a lot of help. Maybe that wasn't all that helpful, but we had a lot of help and we got it done. And in true Marine Corps fashion, we found a way.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that story. And I'm loving this conversation. I don't want it to end, but we are nearing our time. And I always ask, the one question that I love to ask is, what's that one advice? So I'll actually distribute it in two because I want to know both perspectives here. So what advice would you give to kind of the emerging leaders who are stepping into their first kind of major P&L and fleet management role, and something that you learned later on in your career, but you would want to kind of give them now, like, here, this is what you need to know?
Well, Cynthia, I think, if I were to impart some advice on anyone emerging into a new role, especially a profit and loss role, a couple of things, maybe a little bit general and then maybe a little bit more specific, but generally, just stay humble and just know that there are a lot of wonderful people around you that are maybe smarter and more experienced, but that want to help you. It's okay to ask for help. If you're emerging and you're just starting out, you don't have to know everything. I think in addition to that, ears open and mouth closed, that usually helps too. And just as you're getting started and you're getting off the ground. But maybe more specifically, if you're in a profit and loss role, or if you have to manage a number of initiatives or projects or things, and most notably finance, my recommendation for someone emerging into a role would be to keep your eye on the scoreboard, your operating statement, whatever your performance indicators are, leading and lagging indicators, things that are really helpful to see what's happening in the business. So watching the scoreboard, but at the same time, watching what's going on in the game, watching what's happening in the field, visiting people in the field, talking to customers, walking through facilities, really tending to the flock, so to speak. So the good ones tend to see both the scoreboard and the game, and they can watch both. The risk becomes if we watch too much of the scoreboard or we're watching too much of the game. So I think watching both and having a healthy balance between the two is a good method, a good practice for anyone stepping into a role like that.
Well, I think you kind of answered my next question, but I'm still going to ask because you might have another perspective on it. But if you could leave like one, leadership principle, something that you've kind of carried throughout your, years of being in military and in the corporate world as your legacy, for us, not just in supply chain, but just general, today's youth leaders, what would that be?
Cynthia, I think a couple of things come to mind, and they're both related. I think the first is just be a great teammate. Be the best teammate you can be. And what I mean by that is maybe showing up a little bit early, making sure the lights are on, making sure the coffee's going, finding a way to be helpful, generally helpful to those around you. I think being a great teammate is being reliable, picking up the phone, responding when you can, maybe doing a little bit more than it's expected of you, maybe staying a little bit late, just those kinds of things. So being a great teammate, that's the first part. And then the second part would be, it's just all about the team. I've got a good friend who works at the University of Michigan in their football program, and University of Michigan promotes it's the team, and the team. And so I think, you got to support that and do what's best for the organization. But at the same time, you want to be a great teammate as well. So those things come to mind. That's always helped me. And I just love being a part of a team. And I know it's all about the team. So that's what I would suggest. And thanks for asking that.
Be a team player. Well, this has been such a masterclass, Drew. Thank you so much for your beautiful insights, all the way from the battlefield to the boardroom, and such powerful and unique perspective that you have. And I love your the way you kind of address things. So thank you so much for giving us your time today. I know you've been busy, but you still made some time for us. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Cynthia, thanks for having me on the show. I hope it can be helpful to someone out there. I'm always available if I can be of service. And thanks so much for your time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Drew.